A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. In a series I used to read, occasionally one character would say to the other, "May you live in interesting times." It was understood that this was a curse, where interesting times meant chaos and difficulty. Well, we do live in interesting times. I mean, don't we always? So this season, together we will explore equanimity and chaos, recognizing that many aspects of life are beyond our control. Let's find a sense of balance and peace amid external chaos. In our previous episode, we discussed the fact that there are 10 kinds of equanimity. And during this current season of the podcast, the focus has been more about equanimity as a means for facing chaos and how it's an important part of your practice to help during chaotic times. Or, as our introduction says, interesting times. Before our season ends, it makes sense for us to take a deeper dive. Yes, equanimity helps us during these times, but there is more to it, and equanimity plays a role in our ability to gain release from suffering. In these final few episodes of Season 5, I'm drawing on the work of Anne Murphy, who wrote a paper called 10 Kinds of Equanimity. In her paper, she uses the work of Buddhaghosa to discuss and describe these types of equanimity. I found her article on academia.com. It was published in Colombo Arts, Journal of Social Sciences and Humanities, back in 2017. With that in mind, it seems useful to provide some context around Buddhaghosa. Buddhaghosa was a 5th century Sri Lankan monk. Not that we called it that then, but I'm saying that, so it gives you some reference. He was a Theravadan Buddhist commentator, a translator, and a philosopher. He worked at what we call the Great Monastery, or Brahmavihara, in Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka. And he's recognized as one of the most important figures in the Theravada tradition. His name means voice of the Buddha in Pali. In Pali, that's what his name means. And he is best known for the Visuddhimagga, which we will be using, or Anne uses in her paper, so we will be drawing on it. And the Visuddhimagga is called the Path of Purification. It's meant to be a comprehensive manual, taking together some older commentaries on the Pali Canon. It's divided into 3 sections: ethics, meditation, and wisdom. And it is considered by many to be the principal text on meditation in Theravada Buddhism. That doesn't make it true for all Theravada Buddhists, but just a general orientation there. The Visuddhimagga, what it does is it provides a systematic approach to the path of purification, or how to reach enlightenment. The Atisalini, which translates to expositor of meanings, is a commentary that was written by Buddhaghosa, and it's a commentary on the first book of the Abhidhamma Pitaka. And it's one of the things he is very famous for, and it's widely studied among students who really take a deep dive into the Abhidhamma. And when we talk about the Abhidhamma, what we're talking about is when we talk about the Pali Canon, we talk about it being made up of pitakas or baskets. So the Abhidhamma Pitaka is what we call the 3rd basket. And this is where things get more maybe complex, some would say more profound, deeper, where the moral psychology and philosophy of the Buddha's teachings are mapped out or explained and discussed. As one of the Brahmavaharas, equanimity, or upekkha, is defined in the Visuddhimagga as promoting the aspect of neutrality towards beings. However, in the commentaries of the Atisalini and the Visuddhimagga, Buddhaghosa defines equanimity in 10 different ways. And we covered that last time, and we listed the 10 different ways. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 of the types of equanimity. 6-factored equanimity, followed by equanimity as a Brahmavihara, right? Now, 6-factored equanimity links equanimity to each of the 6 senses. Consider this quote: "Having seen a form with the eye, a monk is neither joyful nor saddened, but dwells equanimous, mindful, and clearly comprehending." And that comes from Anguttara Nikaya 279. And this phrase, again, repeats for each sense, right? So associating the sense organ to its corresponding function. Heard a sound with the ear, smelled an odor with the nose, experienced a taste with the tongue, right? Felt an object with the body, thought of or cognized a mental phenomenon with the mind. And those, again, all those are quotes from Anguttara 279. So in this situation, in this teaching, equanimity is said to arise with mindfulness and clear comprehension. So we need mindfulness and clear comprehension for equanimity to arise. Also, though, it's stated that when a monk possesses these 6 qualities, the monk is worthy of receiving gifts, hospitality, offerings, and reverential salutation, and emits an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. In the Visuddhimagga, Buddhaghosa says that the 6-factored equanimity is really the name for the equanimity possessed by the arhat, one whose cankers are destroyed, right? Someone who has gone beyond, a non-returner. He describes this as the mode of non-abandonment of the natural state of purity, when desirable or undesirable objects of the 6 kinds come into focus in the 6 doors. And again, those 6 doors, that's our 6 senses. So in other words, this ability, this state to maintain equanimity, mindfulness, and clear awareness, no matter what's happening between, say, your sound, hearing a sound in your ear, a monk, an arhat, can maintain that state of neutrality, equanimity, right? In the Pali Canon, there is a clear distinction made between a householder, that's like me, right? Somebody who is not a monk or a nun, a lay person. So there's a clear distinction made between those of us who live the secular life and the renunciant, which is a monk, right? Who has renounced all worldly things. And specifically in relation to the 6 kinds of equanimity. So, the householder, and this is how householders described, so don't take it personally. I'm not an untaught, ordinary person who has not conquered his limitations or conquered the results of actions, and who is blind to danger. Yeah, I don't feel offended by that. Such equanimity as this does not transcend the form. And that's why it's called equanimity based on the householder life. So basically, there's a little line being drawn. Oh, I don't know, that's a little line. There's a line being drawn there. And that comes from Majjhima Nikaya 219. But equanimity is said to arise within a renunciant, a monk, who has developed an understanding of impermanence and suffering, knowing that all is subject to change. Thus, the 6 kinds of equanimity are based on the renunciant life. That's also in Majjhima Nikaya 219. The concept of equanimity is differentiated. So there's a conventional type of equanimity that I guess you and I are capable of based on the ordinary householder life. But the 6-factored equanimity, which is the ability to surpass the sensory world, that is the accomplished renunciant. And that's why it's being called the equanimity of the arhat. Now, we're going to move on to equanimity as a Brahmavihara. And here is a passage I think you've heard. He dwells, suffusing the whole world, upwards, downwards, across, everywhere, always with a heart filled with equanimity, abundant, unbounded, without hate or ill will. And that's from Digha Nikaya 251. And that passage is repeated in the Brahmavaharas. Actually, equanimity is the last recitation, so to speak, of that passage, because first comes metta or loving kindness, and then comes karuna or compassion, and then comes mudita or sympathetic joy, and then comes upekkha or equanimity, which is referred to as promoting the aspect of neutrality towards beings, meaning you overcome feelings of resentment or approval directed at others, and therefore nullifies subjective personal preferences or prejudice, right? So we overcome bias. Equanimity is said to help overcome greed. You can find that in Digha Nikaya 248, and resentment. Thus, as a Brahmavihara, upekkha is unbiased and devoid of any discriminatory treatments towards others, being neither negative nor overly positive. So as a Brahmavihara, if I'm able to access equanimity, I am able to access equanimity for everyone, for any reason. Equanimity transcends the detrimental effects of bias and prejudice. See, there you go. I don't have bias or prejudice. And bias and prejudice causes harm to others and to me and or you as the practitioner, right? So the cultivation of equanimity is an impartiality practice. And it's important because it helps us release any entrenched biases that we may have. Equanimity as a Brahmavihara is described as the outcome of the first three. The first three, again, being loving kindness or metta, karuna or compassion, and mudita or sympathetic joy. These ones are altruistic and other-focused, right? They're focused on others. Metta for others, compassion towards others, sympathetic joy or mudita for others. So it's compared by some to be the gable rafters of a roof. First, you've got to get that scaffolding and the framework, right? So if you don't have that scaffolding or that framework, without the foundation that comes from loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, then equanimity could regress into insensitivity and emotional callousness. And remember, and as we've discussed throughout the season, equanimity is not uncaring. It's not apathy. So equanimity built upon those three altruistic Brahmaviharas, which were focused, other focused. Equanimity is said to fail if it produces unknowing, like being unaware, which is called, a worldly indifference of ignorance. So it isn't not knowing or choosing not to know of what is happening. It is knowing and being able to have that lack of bias, that neutrality. Now, in terms of the importance of the Brahmaviharas and equanimity on the path to purification, they fit right within the samadhi section, the purification of the mind, which is about choosing the right meditation object and helping yourself to transition, so to speak, from to progress as a meditator from preparatory or introductory concentration to more sophisticated and ultimately to the jhanas. For immeasurables, the Brahmaviharas are considered a suitable meditation object within that path of purifying the mind and going through the progress of meditation. And so now we have a familiarity with Buddhaghosa and the Visuddhimagga and two types of equanimity, the six-factored equanimity, which is really for arhants or experienced by arhants, and the Brahmavihara equanimity, which is definitely within our grasp. And we'll continue in our next episode. Thank you for being here.
You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.